No, I propose this only within village rights.
Village streets, village right away.
And our private streets would not
No,
fall within this.
I'm not proposing that as part of it.
this is only on our public streets.
What is the practice in other communities that you represent?
It varies widely. Bannockburn doesn't do anything for you. Northfield goes so far as if you have a ditch in front of your house, they'll do a 50-50 to enclose the whole thing, put a storm sewer in there and just disappear that ditch altogether. Glenview, on a public street, takes complete responsibility for all culverts. Northbrook has I think Northbrook has a 60-40 cost share, 60% village. So it's certainly not at all unheard of that communities participate, basically consider that the drainage, the roadway drainage in its entirety has at least some village responsibility. But
My experience has been that as long as it's in the public way, the municipality actually takes care of it. And I think that essentially is what you're proposing.
Well, he's proposing to do the culvert, but not the street on top of it.
That-
Not the driveway.
Not the driveway. The driveway is generally on private property.
No.
well, the driveway apron out to the street.
Comes
No,
out,
you have to
comes
use-
over the culvert.
My approach, I think that's a good idea for two reasons. One, I think that the owner should have some skin in the game, as you will, have some responsibility for this. But again, it's more to my thinking that there's some iniquity in if I replace a culvert at this house and he's got a exposed aggregate fancy driveway apron. Number one, I'll never be able to get it to match the part that I take out and put back will never match. And number two, that strikes me as strictly a private improvement in the public right-of-way. And it's also consistent, we do have existing ordinances that relieve the village of responsibility for specialty driveways when we do utility projects. So we've recognized that in other ordinances, that the village isn't going to be on the hook for specialty driveway materials.
How many driveways are impacted by what we're proposing?
There are roughly 300 driveway culverts in village rights-of-way. These would be only ones that are identified as being deficient. In other words,
So this is potentially a $1.2 million liability.
it's, well, I would propose two things. One, that it would only be where we've identified a particular deficiency. I would suggest that the process would be something that we would identify and propose a replacement. We would bring it to the board. We would still do it on an ad hoc basis, case by case. I don't want to get in a situation where we replace a deficient culvert and then the neighbor just simply says, well, hey, he just got a new culvert. How about my culvert?
Would you be able to prepare a set of standards in the ordinance to determine when this program is effective?
When
Yes,
culvert is
I think, and we would define what a substandard or deficient culvert is, and we would also exclude entirely any new construction. The village is gonna come in and replace culverts where people are building new houses.
Do you view this as a problem that will continue to grow over time, and of these 300 culverts that are currently out there, a certain percentage of them will likely have to be replaced every year, or
I put this on
is this
the,
a one-off thing that if we looked at it and said there are 10 that need to be done today, that's probably the 10 that are gonna be there for the next 20 or 30 years.
right, I think there's probably, I have not gone through and identified all day how many we think are deficient, but it's probably on the 10 or 12 or that actually need some attention now. And then over the years, every now and again, one will fail.
But that being the case, does it make sense to look at this as a sunset? Where we say we'll take care of it on a 50-50 or 60-40, some shared basis through the end of 2011. And beyond that point, then it really becomes a responsibility again of the homeowner.
Well, if you're dealing on a public street, and what Pat is saying is the culvert is the problem.
Now, I understand that, I don't wanna hook us with $1 million liability.
Well, this is a policy, this is not gonna be an ordinance, and policy can be changed anytime you want.
It's hard to, once you've already gone down the path, it's hard, you can't unring a bell. Once you've already done it, you've done it.
Patrick's saying the toothpaste is out of the tube. Pat, a question for you. When the village resurfaces a village road or does maintenance on a village road, do we check the adequacy of the culverts? Because we resurfaced Hoffman, the culvert in front of that house was a 15-inch culvert. When we did Hoffman, we didn't touch it, we didn't tell them. I think if we're gonna start this kind of thing as policy, it also has to be policy when we're resurfacing a road or doing major maintenance on a road, to look at the culverts and say, okay, there's one culvert on the street that's 13 inches or 15 inches and inadequate, and get it changed out at that point while we're working on the road.
Yeah, the simple fact is we missed it on Hoffman on this one. We, of course, on Indian Trails this year, we did catch it, we replaced the culvert, we did all that storm sewer work up there. We do look more closely at this, but I agree that going forward, analysis of all the culverts on the street we are
It
resurfacing.
needs to be part of the prep when we're resurfacing the street.
Now, for the record, we couldn't do that with this Saunders Road project. This project had to strictly be the pavement and the ditches themselves.
Yeah, because that's not ours.
Right, there was some strings attached to the federal funding on that, but I agree that,
When you look at the ditches along Saunders Road, take another look, or a close look at the one at East Course and Saunders, where the Deerfield Park District Golf Course, from the first hole, drains into the, east-west culvert on the south side of East Course Drive, and then it all backs up in front of, Wyman's house. It floods that corner and everything on both sides. And I think the culvert is, I've always maintained that culvert's too small.
okay, we'll certainly, take a look at that. There's economy of scale for the village, if we can bring together 3, 4, 5 culverts, then of course, we can get it
Well, as
done.
long as you're doing Saunders Road, you may wanna take a look at that.
Right, we will.
I have a question. These 10 to 12 culverts that need to be attention, is it more a case of the size, the diameter, or is it more a case of the condition, or both?
These that we have here in front of us are purely just their undersized culverts. They're,
Well, because one of the things that I'm concerned about is if there's 300 potentially, is the increase in impermeable surface, and with that increase, as people like to build larger and larger, that we may continue to have this problem more and more, because then there's more water running off, and so we'll need larger and larger culverts, and we may really need to replace all 300.
I guess if, to my way of thinking, you know, if that happens, or the liability we have, that if that were to come to pass, then what we would experience on the ground is a bunch of undersized culverts and all sorts of drainage problems. And we wanna have something, a policy that we can address that with. And I guess what I'm saying right now is I got very few tools in the toolbox that are effective to deal with this. So, we can, you know, as far as the village's exposure or liability, I think that's entirely in the board's hands on this. You could have an annual cap on what you're willing to spend on these sorts of things, you could have total expenditure, you could have,
I think the question of liability is one we really ought to look at. If we don't do anything, we're not liable. If we start doing something, then
Yeah, but if it backs up and you got water on the street and the car comes down and hits that puddle and skids off the road, are we liable? It's our ditch line that's backing up onto the road?
if it's a natural condition we didn't create, we're not liable. If we start, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it.
no, it certainly should be.
But I think we ought to be
considered.
looking at.
And just from the, I guess, from the pure staff perspective, I'm just kind of flummoxed with these where, you know, 3 residents on the same street call me every spring and say, I've been telling you for 5 years that this guy's culvert's flooding me. Why haven't you done anything about it? And so we're just trying to put some thoughts together here as to how we can put some sort of action plan together that actually arrives at resolution of this problem. Even,
Dup, 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 dup.
You know, 'cause I'm not an innocent to this because Pat and I have been talking about this, but if the problem is recalcitrant owners, there's no